Chris Shandik, CYInterview, covering Las Vegas and the world. Joining us today is empowerment life coach Tamie Joyce. You can find her on YouTube at Tamie Joyce, JOYCE-TV. Miss Joyce, thanks for joining us in CYInterview today. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Chris. How are you?
Good. And also joining us today is CYInterview sponsor, the founder of Epic Financial Strategies LLC, author of the book Surviving Success, and of course the visionary behind his own youth basketball league, Epic Elite AAU, Mr. Rob Gill. Rob, thanks for joining us in CYInterview today. How are you?
Chris, once again, it's a pleasure to be here. Awesome. I love these interviews. And Tamie, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Rob, why don't we just start? How did you meet Tamie?
Well, you know, I like to watch YouTube videos and Instagram videos and TikTok videos. And, you know, something that was brought to my attention about certain mental health challenges. She's not a licensed therapist. She's a coach, right? She's a coach, and she'll talk about that. But, one of her videos was about narcissism. And the thing that stood out, here's the 10 things. I'm not sure if you know what video I'm talking about, and I could have it wrong, Tamie, but here's the 10 things to do to not give a narcissist your energy or your supply. And it went through this whole thing, right? And it was what I noticed in her video style was how she was delivering the message. She was giving good examples. And usually, you know, I got ADD, so I can't pay attention too long. You know what I mean? And I was just gravitated by the message. So I think at one point I may have emailed or somehow tried to get in contact, and I think I'd answer a bunch of questions. Is that true? Did I answer questions, Tamie? Was there something that I answered?
You filled out an application for a consultation call. You did, yes.
So I had some challenges going on in my world, but I answered everything, and you know, they got back to me. And then the next thing, Tamie and I had a conversation, really good conversation. Certain similarities that's up to Tamie to disclose. I won't disclose it. There were certain things that there was a connection there that made me feel safe in having more conversations, and it led to where she is one of my coaches right now. I always talk about a top 5. She's one of my coaches in a very niche on how to take certain things that I went through as a child, because I'm a recovering alcoholic, haven't had a drink since 1996. And along that process of learning how not to drink, some of those other issues from way back when, on some deep level, I didn't address. And, you know, we're discovering what that is.
Yeah.
So Tamie, what are your thoughts on Rob, and why did you want to become an empowerment life coach?
Well, my thoughts on Rob are he's a delight to work with, primarily because he is all about going after it. He is, like myself, very passionate about healing, recovery, personal development, and he's willing to take radical responsibility for himself and do the work to improve, right? So there's my thoughts on Rob. And for the second question, empowerment life coaching is something that I felt called to be honest with you. I just answered the call. In my previous life, I was a residential real estate agent with RE/MAX for 20 years in Montreal. And in that journey, I had worked with a lot of life coaches myself, was, as I said, very passionate about personal growth and development. And I too am a sober, recovering person. My last drink was in 2005. In fact, I just celebrated 19 years on the weekend.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And as Rob and I often discuss, you know, that's a big deal, but it really is the least of it, because once you get into sober recovery, which is what's in the recovery movement considered stage 1 recovery, if you really want wellness, you have to look into stage 2 recovery, which is fundamentally what I teach as an empowerment coach. So it's all about healing and recovery from codependency, narcissistic abuse, adult child syndrome. So going after the original family of origin wounding and trauma, all of the old subconscious programming, and doing the healing and recovery work necessary to address those issues. So again, I felt called to life coaching, and it was just because of my own life journey, my own healing and recovery process. It was a natural progression for me to specialize in this specific area.
Is this the Freedom class?
The Freedom Class is my signature program. Right now, we're running 2 programs. We have the Freedom Class, which is specific to healing and recovery, again, from codependency, narcissistic abuse, and adult child syndrome. And we also have the Ascension Class, which is the next level of growth beyond healing and recovery, where we really get into personal growth and development, identity shifting, reality creation, wealth consciousness expansion, and putting an end to self-sabotage, limiting beliefs and patterns.
Rob, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So, since 2000, I'd say 18, a little bit 17 into 18, I've gone on my personal growth journey. And as Tamie talks, I could finish certain sentences. There's so many different things that we have alignment on when it comes to this stuff that it's, whenever we get together, it's like, oh man, the time's up. It's like one of those things because of what she just when you record the last sentence, it just speaks magnitude of how life can be a game changer if you buy into these principles and own them in your heart. But it takes time to get there and process steps and everything else. And if I'm to interview Tamie right now, my question is, Tamie, your social media presence is incredible, right? To me, I love it. I love the message. I love what you do on YouTube. I love, I love everything about what you've created. Before that, I just discovered, I didn't know this, that you did real estate for 20 years.
Yeah.
How did you go from real estate, right? Whenever that ended, what year, to the first? Because a lot of my people, they always want to know about social media and, business and digital marketing and everything else. How did you go? How did you make that transition from real estate to this, when you first started, and then when you first started to get to where we are today, including this massive presence that you have?
Thank you. Great question. That is a whole journey in itself. So again, answering the call. I loved residential real estate sales, especially in the area where I worked in Montreal, the West Island of Montreal. It was a beautiful place to work, surrounded by beautiful people. I was working with what was, the top producing people, the top producing company. It was an incredible environment, especially coming from the history that I came from, because I was surrounded by people who were very much about, again, personal growth and development. So we were doing the Tony Robbins events, like all the things, right? Wayne Dyer in person, live, all the things that we did throughout the 90s and whatnot and onward. And I would say for the first 10 years of that career, I absolutely loved it. And the second half of that career, not so much, in the sense that I knew I was being called in a new direction, but it really took time for me to figure out what that was, because it was around that time that I committed to my sober recovery, was doing that work through 12-step fellowship, and ultimately, all the other fellowships and all the other things that I did for, as I said, stage 2 recovery. So that was a real, dark night of the soul journey at certain periods. While professionally, I was like, I don't feel like I fit here anymore, and I know I need to move in a new direction, but it really took some time to figure that out. So I believe it was in 2011, I was introduced to the concept of being able to earn an income online. And my top 3 core values are freedom, growth, and courage. Freedom being the top core value. And the notion of being able to work from anywhere in the world. I'd been quite a world globetrotter in my 20s. So the notion of being able to work from anywhere in the world on my laptop was just mind-blowing to me. So I was very, at that time, I really wanted to learn how to leverage the internet to grow a business. But again, that took time also. Back in 2011, it wasn't the world that it is today in terms of social media and internet marketing and what have you. But that desire never left me. And long story short, again, answering the call, I finally left real estate, just decided to take the plunge and moved across the country from Montreal to Calgary, Alberta, not really knowing what that was gonna look like, and just decided that I was gonna figure it out. And ultimately I got online, I started learning social media marketing. I was working to develop those skills and trying to figure out what that was gonna look like for myself. And I was working with a coach who at the time I was in a combination of network marketing and affiliate marketing. And I was working with a coach who fundamentally gave me the kick in the butt that I needed. He said, "What are you doing in affiliate marketing? You're a coach. You need to be coaching. Like there's a call on your life." And he really saw something in me that the old family of origin programming, like the self-doubt that holds us back. He saw something in me that I was not yet quite able. I knew the spark was in me, and I had always felt called to coaching, but I was not quite able yet to see that. But he gave me that kick in the butt that I was, meant to be a coach. And I just started on that path. What would that look like? What would that mean? Doing getting the education in terms of digital marketing. We're told to, pick a niche, solve a problem. What's the most painful problem you know how to solve? And when a mentor asked me that question, it was very easy for me. I knew exactly what the most painful problem was that I knew how to solve. And as that developed, I just knew there was a call in my life to move in that direction. Now, having specialized in codependency and narcissistic abuse healing and recovery for a number of years, leveraging YouTube quite successfully, and other social media platforms as well, of course, I feel a call again to move in. I believe this will always be a piece of what I do, but it's time for another conversation. It's time for a higher level conversation. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's, yeah.
Yeah, and this is for anyone that's watching this. There's no such thing as overnight success. She started social, online marketing in 2011 to 2024. It didn't happen overnight. And her niche is what she found, and she followed her heart, her calling, which obviously led to this next mindset that you have right now. Do you want to talk about what your next journey may look like, or where you're at, or what's going on?
Absolutely. So I love the work that I do with my clients. There's so much to be said around this. I love the work that I do with my clients. Doing this work, it's become clear to me that there's again another level of conversation that needs to be had. So, narcissism is a real buzzword. People throw it around willy-nilly with absolutely no idea of the implications of that, what that actually means to have a destructive narcissist personality pattern, right? So in creating the content for leveraging the internet, it's become a bit of a burnout, to be honest with you, talking about toxic people and toxic relationships all day long. After so many years, there's a bit of a burnout around that, right? So for me, it's been about figuring out how can I continue to serve that person in their healing, their growth, their evolution, and their ascension, hence the ascension class, without burning out on this topic of toxic people and toxic relationships all day long.
It's a great question.
I think it's time, like there's, again, it's such a buzzword today. I think it's time. So the Ascension class, as I said, is about the next level of healing, the next level of growth beyond the healing and recovery process. So it's where we really get into, once you've broken free from the destructive, painful relationship, and you've done at least some work to heal the subconscious magnetic relationship patterns. In other words, the original family of origin, wounding, and trauma. So you've got some healing and recovery under your belt. Now what? Because life is better, whether you've broken free from the toxic family of origin, or the toxic marriage, or the toxic friends, or the toxic boss, whatever it might be. Life is better. But for many of my clients, the now what question is huge, because life is better, but they're still not living that fulfilled life on purpose. They're feeling good in their own skin. There's more peace. The PTSD symptoms have healed, but they're still not living to their full potential, feeling fulfilled. So this is where the Ascension class comes in terms of, let's do the work of identity shifting, really crafting your identity from soul connection, who you were always meant to be, who you came to the planet to be. Let's really hone the skills of leveraging our subconscious mind, the power of our subconscious mind, and creating reality, consciously co-creating reality. Let's heal the old dysfunctional, toxic money story that we've been handed generation after generation, keeping people stuck in these, limiting paradigms, these limiting beliefs, and really step into wealth consciousness and prosperity consciousness. Because we can't really serve and turn this ship around, what's going on our planet, from a place of scarcity. You can't really put a dent in what's going on, however you came to the planet to do that, from a place of being broke-ski, as I often say. Like, that we need a level of empowerment, and financial empowerment is part of that. And then there's some very specific things that I've learned along the way, both personally and professionally, in my own life, my own journey, and working with clients, in terms of the things that get in our way, that trip us up, with regard to self-sabotage patterns. So let's look at those and develop the skill set necessary to be able to have mastery, so that we're not held back in our life, and we can start living that fulfilled life on purpose that we actually came to the planet to live. The tagline for the Ascension class is becoming the you were always meant to be. And as we do that, one individual at a time, really reclaim our personal power, become the sovereign, on purpose, soul-led people that we came to the planet to be, collectively, we shift what's going on the planet. And Lord knows we need that. So.
Chris, anything, brother? Back to you.
Yes. Do you notice anything in all of your clients, like one general thing that everybody is dealing with across the board, Tamie?
Oh, there's a number of things that would be common. That would be very common. A level of disempowerment. Codependency is, if we really get to the crux of it, and certainly the work that I'm well known for to this point, codependency recovery is what's at the core of that. And this is epidemic in our culture, on our planet, right? Not few people have even the desire to step on the path of self-reflection, taking radical responsibility for themselves, and doing that work, right? So, common themes would be a level of disempowerment, but a willingness to accept radical responsibility and do the work to make the change. Sick and tired of being sick and tired, really done with the pain, and willing to do, as they say in 12-step, willing to go to any lengths, right? So those are the folks that I typically end up working with, and there's certainly the folks that get the best results. That ability to be humble and do the work. Yeah.
Rob, anything coming to mind?
Yeah, I look at Tamie as a person that's there to help people, to help make the world a better place. And my question is, how did it all start, Tamie? Where are you from? Like, what were those early years like that created this version?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. So I was born in 1969 to a teenage mom. She was 17. I was her second child, and two different fathers. And my father was a 21-year-old thug in a place called Park Extension, Montreal, quite a rough part of town. And they had both been reared in severely alcoholic. It's certainly on my father's side, lots of violence. My paternal grandfather was a brutalizer. So there was extreme poverty, alcoholism, a lot of trauma, generational trauma on both sides. My mother walked out when I was 3, and my father fundamentally handed me to his mother to raise. So I grew up with my grandmother. And given all of the options, thank God for that. Thank God for her, because relative to the other options, that was certainly the best place that I could have. That was probably the only really good decision my father ever made for me. So Thank goodness for that. But it was far from perfect. My grandmother had been terribly brutalized by my alcoholic grandfather for 25 years prior to me arriving. In fact, it was while my mother was pregnant for me that she finally made the decision to leave. And I believe that she had some degree of, she certainly had CPTSD and some degree of covert narcissism. She wasn't terribly malevolent, and certainly not where I was concerned, but she had all of those traits. So she had a lot of people pleasing, you know, a real need for approval from my aunts and uncles. And I was never hungry. I grew up on her welfare check. I was never hungry. I always had a roof over my head, you know, birthday presents, Christmas presents under the tree. I didn't want for much in that regard, although we did grow up poor. I was blessed in many ways. However, there was a blind eye turn to a lot of abuse, and there was a lot of abuse, emotional, what I consider to be emotional, psychological, spiritual, constant criticism, shaming, scapegoating, in addition to all the other kinds of abuse that, you know, we deal with in the recovery movement, that, you know, it either a blind eye was turned or there just was no one there to protect or champion me in the way that a child needs to be. So by the time I was, 13 years old, I'm drinking alcoholically, I'm drugging, I'm a 14-year-old runaway, then I'm in the system for a few years, right? So, quite a chaotic and painful young life.
How did you survive that? Was it like age 14 to 8? Like, how did you have was there an angel somewhere along the line?
Yeah, it had to be. I used to say Green Beret angels protecting me. When I consider the circumstances that I often found myself in, that I came out in one piece and relatively unscathed, emotionally and psychologically, maybe, certainly damaged, but, relatively unscathed considering the places I found myself. I'm quite fortunate. I ran away at 14, quite frankly, because I had been, carted off to my father and stepmother's place. And that was such a sick environment on so many levels that I was better off on the streets, Yeah. And it wasn't long before I was picked up by the cops and put into a group home where I was properly protected and cared for. So there was definitely divine protection and guidance the entire way, without question. I was absolutely protected. Yeah.
Where do you, when it's all said and done, right? And we're looking at the dash between data, when reporting, when we shuffle off this mortal coil, what is the message you want? Because there'll be a digital version of you out there forever. What is the message you want for people to know what you did, your flag in the ground?
Love yourself. 2 words. It's that simple. That's the game-changing stuff, right? That is the game-changing stuff. I think that's really the crux of what I teach. Codependency recovery, I think it's Ross Rosenberg who coined the term, and I think it's the most accurate term I've heard in that lane of the recovery movement, self-love deficit disorder. And that was the crux of my issues that I had to, learn to resolve for myself, and then ultimately answer the call to support other people in learning to resolve for themselves. So teaching people how to love themselves fully and completely. Self-love deficit disorder is what ails the majority of society, even when it looks real good on the outside. Even when folks are high functioning and it all, it really, what ails us is a self-love deficit disorder. So if it really had to be crystallized in terms of what I feel that my mission and calling is about, it's about empowerment, it's about sovereignty, it's about freedom. But more than anything, it's about teaching people to fall madly and deeply in love with themselves, because in doing so, you now become a channel for love. And folks, one thing that I think folks often overlook, they don't get, and I really, in my work, drive home, tough love is still love.
Mm-hmm.
You know, having the ability to set boundaries, exercise limits, walk away from harmful people who feel entitled to hurt you and then blame you for the hurt they caused, project their own shadow onto you. There's nothing loving about standing still and enabling toxic, harmful people to continue to be toxic and harmful. That's not loving for you or for them. So, you know, I think that we need to redefine love in action, what that looks like. And that's a big piece of real, like when we get to real codependency recovery and real empowerment coaching, that's a big piece of it. I give people permission to tell people to, you know, hit the road, you know, if need be, because sometimes that is the only sane option. And sometimes folks really just need permission to be able to stand up for themselves and do what they need to do to take care of themselves.
Chris?
Yep. You know, let me just ask you, Tamie, have you heard about Rob's book, Surviving Success, yet?
I have, yes.
Yeah.
Rob, go ahead, share.
Well, Tamie knows everything about it, but for the audience, thank you, Chris. The book is about my journey in recovery while making every financial mistake along the way you can make. So I've created an experience for people to lean on my shoulders to take all my good information and the beautiful challenges along the way and what the mindset around money should be if it excels into a place of financial freedom. And thanks. Here's a copy of the book. And, you know, the book really, it documents how I was brought up, all of the challenges and the dysfunction that I brought into money, how that manifested itself out when I started making some good money. And, you know, along the way, that's when I discovered self-help, peak performance mindset, and coaching. And even to this day, I'm still going through beautiful challenges. There's a challenge right now that surviving this next challenge is a major thing. That money caused the dysfunction in. You know, money created dysfunction in my personal relationship that now is showing its beautifully ugly head, and working through that as well. So it's about life is not a graduation, right? Life is a journey, and we make beautiful mistakes, and the level that we could really step into it not to make it again, and at the same time work through it, not to avoid it and bury it, is what the book is about. But it's also, you know, how Tamie and I, you know, became a student and teacher.
Tamie, thoughts on what Rob said?
Well, I mean, I agree with, you know, tick, 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 everything that he has just said. In, you know, life, we're so often working to get to the destination, and being able to embrace the journey and learning to embody your true authentic self along the way, and understanding that failure is a part of success, and learning to be able to hold that on the journey, I think is everything. I mean, this is the growth and evolution, the ascension process, really, right? So, yeah, I agree completely.
How do you think him writing his book has helped his life journey?
You know, whether it's writing a book or creating content for social media or creating a program and working with folks, or, you know, being a keynote speaker, anytime that we take the time, however we are called to do that, we take the time to go within and really pull the gold from all of the crap that we've been through and distill that down, that in the service of others, that really is in the service of ourselves as well as others, right? So there's a really amazing mentor out there, also from my neck of the woods in Canada, who says, for me, for you, for us, right? So when we are writing a book, creating content, whatever it is that we're doing, we are contributing to our own healing, our own ascension journey, as well as those that we're meant to touch, those lives that we're meant to touch, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that that's, for anyone who's creating anything, it's a gift that contributes, the gift that keeps on giving, right? A gift that contributes to our own process as well as the process of others.
Rob, anything you want to add in closing?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you, Tamie, so much for spending time today, number one. Number two, for all the folks that are going to watch this, see this, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you? And I highly recommend everybody does, just so we're clear.
TamieMCoaching.com. So TAMIE, M is in Mary, coaching.com. And I'm also Tamie M Joyce on YouTube. Yep.
I can't, Tamie, thank you so much. I learned a lot today, as I always do. I appreciate the time and being able to share a stage with you like this. Chris, thank you for facilitating this and letting this happen on CYInterview. Which, Tamie, by the way, CY is the biggest, fastest growing independent news agency in Vegas with a Facebook 300,000 person following.
320,000, 25,000 plus at this point, actually, Rob. We're getting there.
There you
Moving
go.
along. Tamie, I just want to say to you in closing one last thing, and I think Rob will appreciate this. You know what's really sad about today's conversation is not anything you said, but sad that how you make the point that most people don't have any self-analyzation in their own life. And I think that is really sad, honestly.
Yeah, hopefully that changes over time. I believe it has changed. It continues to change, but
I think the pandemic of the last 4 years did it for a lot of people because they were forced to and they didn't like it. No.
That's a whole other big conversation. I could talk for days about what's gone on in the last 4 years. I believe the world is going through an awakening and an ascension, and in doing so, we are definitely forced to look at our shadow. Some of us are doing that wide awake and willing, and some of us are coming to that kicking and screaming with tremendous resistance. And either way, we are being forced to wake up.
Oh, I want to be awake always. I want to be awake. I want to be ready for the moments. That's for sure. I know Rob does too. So for Empowerment Life Coach Tamie Joyce and CYInterview sponsor Rob Gill, thank you both for being on CYInterview, and hang on with me.